These are recordings with Dr. Chetana Kripalu. We are beginning our series on the physical body. And the first question here is regarding the term anatomy and the term physiology. Each one of us as human beings, we have a body. When you hear this term anatomy and physiology, in a generic sense, in a general sense, as a medical doctor, what comes to your mind when you hear these two words?
Anatomy means, from what I've obviously learned in my medical school and what I've realized, is literally the structures of the body, meaning what you can see physically through your eyes, the muscles you can see, the blood vessels you can see. Obviously, when you open a dead body or a cadaver, as we call it, you can see the nerves there. Then you can see, like I said, veins and arteries. You can see the bones. You can see essentially the whole structure of each organ. You can see what it's made of. Matter, that's what I would say. Anatomy equals to matter would be the best description. And physiology is, it's hard to see physiology. It's only what we've learned in medical school. To some extent you can, because you can see how the body functions. So the functioning of the body is the physiology part of it. So the blood vessels is things like blood pressure, how they flow through every organ into the heart, get oxygenated and come back and go back to the rest of the body. Things which you can, it's like plumbing, I can describe it that way. That is one form of physiology. And then, of course, the electrical aspect, for example, of the heart, which is what gives rise to heart rhythms, the beats, the pathways, the current, and also how each organ system functions. The gastrointestinal system functions from the time you put a morsel in your mouth. What are the enzymes which come in and act with it and process it, and how the body's piping mechanism and each individual organ system works. That would be physiology.
All right, so that's a great, nice introduction. When we think about the structure of the body, and of course, we're aware of the genetics, the 46 chromosomes, and then how the body develops. What interests you or fascinates you most about just the anatomical aspects of the body?
Just the anatomical? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the beauty of that is about how much is in your body under the skin, not just what you can see on the surface, right, to make this incredible machine, as I can call it, work at such a macro level as well as at such a micro level. Right. So it's a combination from micro to macro, and that's amazing. We probably don't even know, even though anatomy came around years and thousands of years ago, still I think we're still we're still trying to figure out a lot of things, how each and every part of our body works. So it is wonderful to see that it's structural, but it's, as I said, it's from micro to macro would be the best way to describe anatomy.
Right, because as we know, the formation of a zygote is the one cell, and then from there this incredible being that we are comes about. And there are just so many things that have to happen exactly in the right sequence for there to be, quote, a healthy/normal body. So would you describe for us what is meant by a normal/healthy body anatomically? And I know it's a big question, but in a more generic sense, what comes to your mind may be interesting here.
So health in general, in connection to anatomy, health itself is a broad topic.
Yes.
Because it doesn't just mean anatomical. It's on several levels. It's at the mind level, it's the emotional level, or a mental health level. Then it comes to the anatomical level, and then the physiological level, the biochemistry level. So there is a lot there to describe health as such, because the body is trying to go through millions of reaction every second constantly, and whatever we do, the body is always trying to fix itself, correct itself, rejuvenate itself, regenerate itself all the time. And it's such an order, or it's put in such an order by the universe, or it's just how it's come about. It's just amazing how it just happens without us being conscious of it, and constantly all through the body.
Right. So I think that's a very important piece, because each person, each human being has a body. Anybody listening to this has a body, and there is this massive chemical reaction going on. All the various reactions are going on. Plus, the body is changing all the time. So there's a transitory aspect to this. So my question here is regarding the miracle of life. There are some movies on that also. The fact that life is a tremendous miracle in many ways, whether it's a scientific miracle or a biochemical miracle, or some people may believe it's some kind of a spiritual miracle. What is your perspective on this notion that so many things have to go right so that it can be this life that we have, just physiologically, anatomically, functionally?
Absolutely. So I think it starts in our minds, simply putting it.
Yeah. Because we're looking at the body through our minds.
Exactly.
Even researchers are.
That's just the beginning, an idea, a thought, how it can transpire into anything pretty much. So that's why they call it a miracle, because we don't know the intricacies of how even the mind affects the body at such a minute level, at an particular particle level or an atomic level or whatever, electrons, whatever you call it. So the energy which is generated from thoughts, which is positive, or negative, is the one which dictates how the body works, or the body reacts or responds to the mind. And that in itself is amazing, because the mind gives rise to different thoughts every minute, and according to that the body tries to work itself and come to a homeostasis, or a balance. Trying to always create that balance is just amazing, how the body has to do it like 24 hours a day, even in your sleep.
So yes, so from a anatomical or physiological point of view, anatomical and physiological point of view, there is this innate inborn drive for survival, for maintenance of the body, for maintaining balance of the body. And then so along those lines, there is what is technically called genotype, and then there's phenotype. The genetic programming that is there. The genetic programming is a template for the creation of the body, creation of the anatomy of the body, but there's also the physiology of it. Could you say something about that connection?
So the genotype is, obviously we're born with genetic programming, like you said, RNA, DNA, all the different, can describe it in so many different ways. I'm not going to get it into the technical aspects, but the genes are what it is, and it's almost something new which we've learned in the last few years, that genes do not dictate your health completely, meaning they do, but it's not that because you have certain genes in your being that you are going to get a disease or not going to get a disease.
So it's not dichotomous that way. So it's not. There's a genetic factor. We talk about different factors, right? So what you're saying is that genes have an influence, or they have a certain factor, but it's not the whole thing actually.
Exactly, because if you really look at history, prehistoric times, however you want to call it, each genetic material to change and mutate takes thousands of years to do that. So it's not that the genes are changing or going bad or good or anything like that. And that's why this new field which is growing and which is coming along, and scientists are working hard to develop more research on this and figure things out, is called epigenetics. So what that means is your environment, which means the outside, which is the food you eat, your lifestyle essentially, and your mind, which is behavior, is the one which modifies these genes to express itself one way or the other.
So what you're saying is that each person really has some influence on the way the genes are expressed, because genes are just a certain type of code inside each cell, but the expression of it is what creates the anatomical structures, it's what creates the physical body. That's what you're saying. So yeah,
Absolutely. So that is amazing, because before we said that if I'm born with certain gene, then I am doomed if it's a bad one, and I'm really, really lucky to have the good gene, I'm fine. Both ways are wrong. So how do they, for example, if a person who has no family history or genes, it's not family history, genetic history of cancer, for example, and they say that I don't have anybody who has breast cancer in my family, and so I'm free to do anything and everything. So if they go and eat bad, all the food products which are toxic to the body, and faced with a lot of environmental toxins, and do not exercise, not outside in the sun, do not drink enough water, behave badly mentally, they're depressed or anxious or angry and everything like that, they are going to trigger the genes of cancer, because there is some gene with everyone which is dormant. And so that expression brings it on, and they will get some kind of maybe even if they don't get cancer, for example, they're going to get tons of other diseases which are out there right now.
Which is all a type of imbalance, the disease or disorder or illness in some form or other. It's an imbalance from the word you were using before, that is homeostasis, which refers to this set point of like ideal balance. So could you say something about that?
Absolutely, because body, like I was telling you in the first time, is always trying to fix itself, going back to this homeostasis where the body can actually function amazingly and go on. And that's the way the universe is meant for the body to be. And when I say body, I meant all kinds of body, mental body, physical body, and both together.
And it's also true for animals. I mean, the same animal physiology. Yeah,
exactly. The difference between animals and us, the animals have no mind. I mean, they have a mind, but not like us, developed mind. So they follow with their instinct, and they only do those things. They do not go beyond. Now, the good thing which we have is we have a mind. If we use it right, if we use it to our advantage, we can do so much more with it. Yes. But if we don't and we misuse it, then we are doomed to suffer even more than the animals.
Yeah, I think that's a tremendous point, because if we are simply a biochemical machine, as the field of anatomy and the various subdivisions in that field have discovered, these more and more subtle aspects of the physical body, and of course the gross to the subtle, to the microscopic, to the molecular. From all of that, there is a mechanistic viewpoint that this is a machine at work. But what you're saying is that machine that is working, that is the body, is not just mechanistic. There is the influence of the mind on the actual mechanics of the body.
Absolutely. Definitely. So that's why the mind is so powerful, because every time you get a thought, which I call an impulse in your brain, which is generated, it has an effect on what kind of chemical substances created. And chemical substances influence behavior, influences action, and then it becomes a personality. And once a person develops a personality, which means they're habituated to a certain way of life, then that becomes the reality.
Yeah, that becomes like the new normal.
Exactly.
Which is pathological many times, or which is harmful.
So that leads to conditioning in that human being, and that conditioning goes on and on and on until the person actually realizes what he has become, or what has become of him.
So I just have a quick question here. We use the word physiology, and of course there's neurophysiology, the physiology of the brain, the spinal cord, etc. You talked about the mind-body connection, the mind-brain connection, and conditioning and behavior. To what extent do you feel that each person really has even a grasp of their conditioning, which has a neurological substrate, so there's neurological processes and neurons and all those. There's an anatomical piece, then there's the functioning of the brain and the spinal cord, and then there's this behavioral aspect, the psychological aspect. So to what extent do you feel that each person really has that kind of influence over their own body, their own mind, their own brain? Okay, so to put the question in a different way, we have, of course, this physical body. We have these anatomical structures. There's the development of the physical body from childhood, etc. Then there's the development of the human brain and something that we call the mind, as well as our personality, as well as our conditioning. All of this, which you were just mentioning. The question is regarding this belief that many people have or tend to have, that if there is something wrong with the physical body, whether it's an illness or a disease or a disorder or even an injury, that I really have no control over it, that the medical doctor is 100% responsible to find the right medicine and to fix it somehow. Fix me, can you fix me? Can you fix this problem? What is your take on that type of a perspective?
Yeah, that is absolutely right. That's how, unfortunately, people have been habituated so far from traditional medicine, saying that I go to my doctor with a problem and he's going to give me a medication, or he's going to run tests and then some kind of a treatment plan which is going to fix me. The what people don't know or they were not aware of is thousands of years ago, we did not have traditional medicine. And that didn't mean people just died like flies, first of all. Second thing is, it was taught at those times how one could find ways to heal themselves. Or actually, when I say heal, it's a little different from treatment. Treatment just means, yes, you're going to fix the problem, but a lot of times we do not know where it comes from. The root cause or the base of the cause of the disease is unknown. So we're literally fixing the symptoms, and that's all we do.
So allopathic medicine, or what's known as allopathic medicine, is really more symptom management, symptom treatment.
It's become like that, even though it shouldn't be, but unfortunately it's just become like that. Of course, there is a lot of advancement in technology, so it's very useful for quick things, like it's called acute stuff. That means if somebody broke a bone, it's very advantageous to fix it with a surgery or with plates and rods, so that the body has some support to heal in a shorter frame of mind. That's excellent. If somebody had an accident and some kind of a rupture, they seal it, they give them blood, they make them well. So it's literally supporting the body to heal faster. Now there are somebody's had a heart attack and they can open it up and do a bypass, or with like an open heart surgery or any other procedure needed, and they help the body heal better and save their lives. Absolutely, there is a big role for traditional medicine. But coming back to the issue about going to the doctor and saying 100% fix me, that is where we are having issues now, because those are all what we call it as chronic disease management, and that happens over time, and we do not realize that everything we do is our choice, and the choice we make every moment affects us in many ways. And it starts from what thoughts you think, and then what you put in your mouth, and do you walk, what do you do to your body at every level, and many other things which you do with your body, whether you sit in a place, whether you exercise, whether you walk, whether you're walking outside, all these kinds of things. And so lifestyle essentially is the problem. So we do not pay attention to how we live and how we walk, how we talk, how we take action. We are unaware of most of these things, and not intentionally, but that's because we have too much in our minds, and which is what we call as stress. These are all the things which become a problem because the body becomes dysfunctional, not knowing how to keep fixing itself. And so it will appear, or it appears as a symptom, and the symptom doesn't always mean it's broken. It's just the body is trying to tell us something, saying that something you're doing is not right, something you're doing is inappropriate. And we think it's just broken, and the easiest way to fix it is by taking a medicine. For if somebody has a headache, all they will do is go and take Tylenol or ibuprofen to make it go away and not wonder why they have a headache. What caused the headache? Did they eat something? Was there any preservative in their food which could have caused it? Is there too much tension which they are going through in the recent past? Is it something which they have not been, like sleeping, not having enough water? Have they had a walk? Or are they around the computers and technology all the time? There is so many reasons that one could have a headache, but they don't, and this could be definitely addressed by the person themselves, and that would be a big factor. If we really paid attention at everything we did, we could figure out or get to the root cause of half the problems ourselves and know how to fix it.
So you use the word symptom. Well, I think people generally understand what that means, but if you could just talk about that a little bit more, what is your understanding of the symptoms, and specifically how they are telling the individual that things are not right? There's something wrong here. The body is kind of telling the person directly and experientially that things are out of balance.
Yeah, so like I said, headache, or somebody has pain anywhere in the body and something which doesn't feel right.
So it's a direct personal experience.
Absolutely. That's what the symptom means, and that's why we cannot elicit, or we cannot even move forward before the person gives us a good history. History means what are all the things which happened in the past, and then what did they experience. Mm-hmm. In fact, physical exam, which we examine with a stethoscope or what we look at things, is only like literally 20%. 80% of our choices of how we go from, or basically 80% of the time, the choices we make as far as running tests or doing imaging is all based on the person's history. And that is why one has to take such a detailed history in every aspect of their lives, because that's what matters, which appears or which presents itself as a symptom.
Right. So in many ways, as you're taking the history, you're trying to understand what has occurred with the body, and the clearer that understanding is what guides your decision making as a physician with regards to medications and other treatments.
So it's not just what's occurred with the body, it's basically what they've gone through and what they've gone through in their minds. For example, if somebody had a really stressful period for a month, and they start having stomach issues, if they start having headaches, or they start having chest pain or chest pressure, anything like that, because of it, you would know that many of these symptoms are as a consequence to the stressful event which they've had.
So I have a question here. How does a person become more aware of what the body is telling them? These are all the things that you're just talking about right now. These are all symptoms, and that's a very powerful word. I mean, we kind of use that loosely in the general society, but experientially, directly, personally, how does what should an individual do to increase their awareness of what the body is telling them so that they can actually relay that to their primary care physician and other doctors?
Basically paying attention to every aspect what your body goes through. And we don't do that because we're always in our minds, always thinking about the past, or dwelling in the past, or thinking about the future. What am I going to do next? How am I going to solve a problem? So they don't pay attention to any of them. They don't know what goes in their mouth. They're just eating. Sometimes they call it stress eating.
Or emotional eating.
Exactly. So they eat and they don't realize what happens after that. They don't walk. They sit on a couch, and half the time they're eating while watching TV. So they're really not aware of anything they're doing in their lives.
So in many ways, many human beings, as we have a physical body, we're actually damaging the body by these mishaps of behavior.
Absolutely. That's why mind is the first thing which dictates the body. I had started off the question answer thing. It is amazing how much the body depends on the mind to function right.
Right, and see, that's a powerful statement you're making, because it tends to be a view, a much more mechanistic view, even on the researcher side, that this is all just a physiological, programmed, mechanistic, like a biochemical machine process. And Yes, I mean, there is that. I mean, there is definitely this mechanistic machine process. But what you're saying is that there is this mind-body connection, that what we call the mind, or the individual will, the individual perspective, has a profound influence. And that tends to be more difficult to grasp. It's one thing to see a blood test and see some quantitative results. What you're talking about is, yeah, you got the blood test, you got all that, but you're talking about something else that is perhaps a little bit more subtle. Could you elaborate on the combination of these two, and how would you describe that aspect that is more subtle?
It's very subtle because we are so tuned to the fact that we believe what we see. So we are only depending on our senses. The eyes, for example, if you see something beautiful, you know it's beautiful. And then the other senses, you hear something beautiful like a music, then it's beautiful. You taste something which is so delicious, it's absolutely amazing food. And the sensing, the feel, whether it's the wind touching your skin, wearing good clothes, wearing good shoes, wearing just all the luxurious living which people love because of all the pleasures which one experiences.
Yeah.
So we've we've conditioned in our lives to base our quality of living just based on that, with our senses, and that is what the problem is.
It's what we would call the pleasure principle, to run after that, essentially.
Exactly, but we do not know how it actually works on your body. For example, we know that eating, all the delicious foods which you eat are not always good for you. So that is why we are not aware of that, because you don't feel that every time you eat, your body is not going to say, don't eat this, or I'm going to do this. It starts with adjusting itself to whatever you're doing, and then eventually when it cannot do anything, that's when it gives you the symptoms.
So as a human being, each human being has much greater mental power and decision making, and this personal experience of pleasure and whatnot. All of that is in many ways so much more potent than simply the mechanistic process of the body.
Absolutely. That is why that's why you feel powerless when you go and you don't understand,
right,
how can this happen to me,
right,
and I haven't done anything wrong. Which means you're basing it on just the general principles you're living through,
right,
but it's more subtle than that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's everything which you put in your mouth, every stress or every thoughtful negative thought which you went through, and what the consequence of that was on the body, and how the body processed it. So it's that subtle level we're not aware of most of the time.
Right, and you just talk about how the body is processing food as well as other stimuli from all five senses, relationships, etc. All of that is impacting the physiology of the body. So there's the anatomy that's already there, but then there's the physiology, the function of it, and if that function is out of balance, it's out of homeostatic regulation, it's the homeostasis is disturbed somehow, then what you see on the other end of that is the illnesses and problems and whatnot, right?
Absolutely.
So could you describe that bridge, between this input into the body, into the mind, and of course into the body, all the way up to the level of actually these signs and symptoms manifesting as these diseases, disorders, etc. Just in a general sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give you an example of some of the diseases nowadays have become very common, but nobody knows what causes it. For example, fibromyalgia.
It's a common one, yeah.
Chronic fatigue disease syndrome. Then you have irritable bowel syndrome, and many more. These are the things which we have no idea about, and these labels were made based on just symptoms, because they could not figure out where it came from, because in traditional medicine you do not believe that mind is even a component which could affect the body, and because you can't see it.
Right, and that goes back to the way even doctors are trained, medical students are trained. It's very much based on mechanistic molecular biology principles, and those things are real also. It's not that they're not real, obviously, but there's much more to it than that. That's for sure.
Right. So, but lately it's been good that people, even scientists, have come, and as more research is happening, getting into quantum physics and quantum theory and everything, where they really know that there is something else there which is dictating outside and inside, the universal field. There's energy around, there's energy in your mind. And so going back to answering your question, so when you get a thought, let's say somebody who is a worrywart, as we know, there are some people who worry more innately, some people don't, but most of us do worry in general. So is somebody who's always thinking about things in the past or thinking about the future, thinking about the welfare of others. Are they okay? Are they not okay? Are they going to be this way? But I have many things to do. Then I have kids to take care of. I mean, etc., etc. There are a lot of these thoughts. And these are all extremes of negative thoughts which are coming in and into your mind. The body releases certain chemical substances which really modify one's behavior over long term, even the hormones. And hence what happens is, now if it happens over years, the body decides, okay, this is enough. I have to really now change from the core, which means the receptors now, which is for the hormones and everything. So to adjust to this thought stream, it seems like this is the new norm. And so it does that. So what happens after years is your body becomes this baseline level of an anxious person or anxious personality, which you gain. And even when you're not typically thinking of any stressful thoughts, your body is anxious because you've conditioned now the body to be a certain way. And so what happens is, over time, your body, that I'm talking about the physical body now, this is the mental body we're talking about. Now the physical body cannot thrive on this kind of a stimulus for too long normally. So it starts affecting the physical body, which is the anatomy part, where, for example, the digestive system, your impulses affects, when we talk about, I'm a bundle of nerves. So what does that mean? So your real nerves in the gastrointestinal system are affected, because remember we talked about receptors and hormones. The same hormones which are in the brain are in your gastrointestinal system or the enteric system. So they are affected too. So what happens is your nerves in your intestine starts getting affected. So the digestive system does not function appropriately. So now what happens is your body is not able to secrete all the hormones it needs, all the enzymes it needs. So it's going to be disrupted. Either this person is not going to absorb anything and have diarrhea, or the person is going to be not able to move the bowels and have constipation, or both, for that example. So when your digestive system, which is the core of the whole body, is not working properly, then you do not get your vitamins, you do not get your nutrients. So you develop deficiencies, which affects the rest of your body. And then you don't have to fathom all the other parts of this, or all the other systems which are affected, and through that. And so the body slowly, while it should be in a state of homeostasis, starts dysfunctioning, and every system starts independently functioning the best it can on its own. So they're not seeing eye to eye. It's not coherent. It's not together. It's not aligned. So your body on the whole can function like the way it should. And then the chronic, that's what we call it as a chronic disease. You develop diabetes, you develop hypertension, you develop rheumatological diseases, which I see a lot nowadays. And that's the result, as you saw from the beginning, how it started. So then now they come to the doctor, and they want it fixed. And there is no medication on earth, you can imagine, now that I gave you an idea how this happens, to fix it. Yes, we have medications to take away the symptoms of the diarrhea or the pains which goes on in the digestive system, and keep taking and feel better in between. But if we do not if we do not get to the core of the problem and slowly try to get itself back into a homeostasis, we're not going to see permanent improvement. We're going to only see the symptoms. You're masking the symptoms by giving the medications, and then we don't know what it can lead to because each person is unique. So that's why it's not the best way to treat someone, and to know that that person who came up with the symptoms 20, 30, 40 years after was responsible every single day, every single moment for causing the disease or to bringing it on them. And when you tell people simply, you brought it on, it doesn't mean they did it knowingly. Nobody wants to be disease ridden. Nobody wants to have a disease. But they did it unknowingly. But knowing that they did it has to give them empowerment to say, if I knew or if I know that I could do this, how do I undo it? Yes, it takes time, it takes perseverance, it takes consistency, it's have to do with changing behaviors, changing lifestyles.
Yes.
All of these things have to happen. But it's good to even be aware that there is a way out of this, and you are so powerful that you can actually do it and take the power in your own hands is the first step.
Yeah, and I think that's it's very well stated. You said take the power in your own hands. You use the word power, which refers to energy, and we all know that we eat food every day. Food has energy, which is what our body uses, and it breaks it all down, and then that the food substances create the various structures of the body also. So in some way or another, we could say that everything is some form of energy and nutrient, and for there to be this homeostasis, for there to be this really good, healthy physiological functioning, what I hear you saying is that the mind of each individual has to be very, very stable and coherent and stress-free and integrated, and some words like that. Because if it's not, it is in some form or other going to throw the body's physiology off.
Absolutely.
That's what you're saying. Is that true?
Absolutely. It will throw it off. So that is why we have to work together. We have to make sure that how you look at life, because that's the beginning.
That's a perspective on how we see things.
Exactly.
Including ourselves.
Absolutely. How you look at life. Obviously, life, it's not only outside of you. How do you look at yourself? How are you a part of this world? How can you look at differently? How can you change your perception? There has to be a shift there, and claim responsibility. Everything, I call it 100% responsibility onto yourself, because that is when you can make a change. You cannot change anybody. So when you start with that and change at that level, and that also to commit to saying, okay, this is a body, this is my physical body, is a temple. It's like a car, it's an expensive car. You want to give it the best fuel. Why? Because you want to make sure you have the best life until the end. And if you do not maintain it, it's just like you maintain a car, take it for servicing every now and then, and every day, the way you look after your car. It's more than a car, but I'm just giving you an analogy.
Yeah.
And you're not going to see the benefits of it. So you eat right, you have to put the right fuel in the body, you have to exercise to give it energy more and more. And then the other huge thing is, we are not in the world alone. So we have to make sure that we are a part of this world, meaning that you want to be involved in other people's lives. And what I mean by that is more so at service to others. Because if you really looked, and this is something which we all know in little ways, when you are doing something for somebody with absolutely no expectation and nothing in return, you feel more a part of the other person or other people than when you get an exchange back from them. And that's what I'm talking about, service and interaction, being a part of the community, being a bigger part of not just your family, bigger community, because we are one of every, the whole humanity. And this is important. Looking at the world now, this is the beautiful time to get together. It doesn't have to be separate. So this is important for us to know that when we all know when we are in multiple numbers, you can make even mountains move. There is no doubt. So that is where we have to also realize that by working on ourselves doesn't mean it's selfishness. All talking about in different levels, mental, emotional, physical level. When you do that, you are available for others, to be a part of others, and you feel fulfilled. There is a part of us which is only fulfilled when you're there for others, when you're a part of others people's lives. It's not enough that we do things for ourselves. So these are all the things which you are aware of more and more, you to see a beautiful life as it unfolds in front of you.
Well, certainly people have experiences of pain and suffering when there are illnesses and diseases, and there's a role for allopathic traditional medicine. There's a role for meditation and volunteer work and taking, doing selfless activity and service and all that. So would you describe how a person can keep attention to the fact that their body is actually affected by every single decision that's made, because we're running in so many directions throughout the day. I think anybody listening to this, just as I'm listening to this, I would agree with, I think, everything you've said. I don't think there's anything in here that anybody would probably disagree with. I wouldn't think so. It sounds very good. It's good to listen to. When it comes to application, it's very difficult, even in my mind, I would say, to say that everything that I'm doing, every thought that I have or every action I'm taking is actually, it's impacting the physiology of my body. I don't think of it that way. There's that real disconnection. The body's just kind of going on its own. And so to enhance that connection, and I think this is a good first step, certainly, what would you say, even to someone like me, who knows this, but really on a day-to-day basis, I don't go around thinking that, wait a minute, how is my heart rate or my kidney or how is my physiology of the body affected by this particular thought or this particular emotion? Most people don't think in that way. I also traditionally haven't really thought along those lines. I wanted to ask you more about that.
Yeah, so you don't have to be aware of everything which happens in the body, because many of these things automatically, that's the beauty of our body. It is happening by itself.
Right.
The only thing we have to be aware, honestly, is where our thoughts are. And and it's not easy. So meditation is one beautiful tool you start with in the morning. Then you do these breathing techniques, which you can do multiple times a day, like every 2 hours. You put a reminder and just breathe. So you give yourself these breaks where you can get into that awareness attitude. And over time, the more number of times you do that, you tend to become more and more aware of where your thoughts are. Of course, you cannot be always thinking of where it's going. That's not what, it's almost impossible.
Right.
But even if you can do it, let's say 60% of the time in a day, the reason for that is you have an opportunity at that point to change the thoughts, to replace the thoughts, and say it's foolish, let me not think about it, and even make those changes and not be in the thought loop. So that helps that. And the simplest way is to breathe, literally breath. Breath really helps your the stress hormones go down, the relaxed hormones come by, and starts making you feel better. So you're actually doing the opposite. You're using your breath to make your mind relaxed. So that is really helpful. And then you have, like I said, you have an opportunity to see where your mind is.
And that would also connect with the quantity of food being eaten, the amount of food being eaten, because there's a metabolism that's going on, and so what you're talking about is really affecting the way the metabolism also works.
Absolutely. So that's why I was saying, so when you are more intent on where your thoughts are and keep it more balanced, or where more into positive thoughts, and that will help you eat better, because now you know what your body needs. So now you're looking at your body. The body's kind of attuning itself to the mind, so it is more balanced. So you're able to see if you're really hungry or you're not, and it's not depleting the brain of sugar just because of stress.
Right.
So now, because you don't have stress, your brain doesn't need that sugar extra, so the craving goes down. So that's when you're going to eat when you're hungry, and not just eating for the sake of stress eating or emotional eating.
Right. I think that's a big challenge for a lot of people because, there is such a tendency to run after the foods that we enjoy and to eat more of them, maybe in a social setting, even if things are going really well in life. I don't mean just like depressive eating and all that. There is that sense of just, continuing that activity for a while. Because as I understand it, it takes some 20-25 minutes for the mind or the brain to recognize the amount of food in the body, right? So could you talk more about that also? Because, as far as the physiology, the anatomy, these are all good ideas and easy to understand in many ways. But we are damaging the physiology by overeating, by eating too fast.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why what you do is drink a glass of water half hour before you eat. If you have planned to eat at a certain time, then you do 2 minutes of breathing exercise. And when I say breathing tools, relaxation exercises, right before you eat, because now you're more balanced, and that would help you not eat more. And then during eating, avoid any kind of electronic equipment, phones or TV or anything. So you're really spending time with yourself and your being to know what you're eating, even enjoy the food, and then eating just as soon as your stomach is full. And you say, oh, I'm done. That's it. And then you have to literally, that time you have to make a choice, and it's a developed habit. You get up from the chair, after you've finished your plate, drink, and then move away from there. Because when you give those few minutes after the meal is over, you may have felt that you could eat more. After a few minutes, it settles down. You really don't feel hungry anymore. And then after 15 minutes of the food, you drink a tall glass of water, you're done. So now you ate exactly what your body needs. Okay. So it's a developed habit, but you can definitely do it. There's a little stuff which you have to do during the meal and before the meal for it to function and, right.
Okay, yeah. So that sounds very good, and really this is a matter of day-to-day practice, day-to-day activity, because we're living in the day. We wake up in the morning, and then I think to make a clear decision or intention, as you said, that this is how I want to live the day today. Could you say something more?
Absolutely. That's why routines are so important in a day, and this is so very important. When you wake up in the morning, my suggestion is spend 15 minutes. If you're getting up at 6, wake up at 5:45. If you're getting up at 7, wake up at 6:45. And that, what you do is the first 5 minutes spend in an attitude of gratitude, which is very easy to do, in the sense that why is gratitude feeling good, or why does gratitude feel good, is because you're appreciating and acknowledging something which has already happened. And that is huge, because you can emotionally feel it. And that's when your vibrations go up. So when your energy or vibrations, you can call it anything you want, you can feel it, a feel-good thing where it's, you can just appreciate that moment positively. And then the next 5 minutes you do would be a breathing technique, or toning, or meditation, however you want to do, and that helps you get into that calmer phase. So the reason this is important is when you are calm is when you can set a good intention for the next 5 minutes or for the day, for the week, or for the next 2 weeks, however you want to do it. And so you already intend, or you set a tone for the day, saying that this is how I want my day to go. And that's very helpful, because you're literally telling your being, which is your subconscious mind and your body, that I have decided this is how I'm going to have my day go today. And usually, for most part, your body and the mind cooperates to some extent with that kind of intention.
Yes, so that type of cooperation is really, really wonderful, and that's what we're aiming for. So to close this recording at this time, do you have any final comments or anything else you'd like to say, in general about anatomy, physiology, mind-body connection, importance of decision-making, setting intentions? I mean, these are all points you've covered. Is there a couple of takeaways from this, maybe just 2 or 3 major points that you would like the audience or the listeners to take away?
Absolutely. So as you learned here, that all this, how this whole, this different body systems are connected, why don't we want to be going through illness? The reason is because it doesn't feel good, and we are, unfortunately, in some ways, are so attached to our body that we want to feel good in our body, so we're able to do everything what we want in this lifetime. And that is why we need to pay attention to all these different aspects of life and different aspects of health, so we can take care of it all together. You can and build more awareness so that you can do whatever you intended to do for a lifetime. So setting up routines is very important that's how I have done in my lifetime, and it's been huge, because and it's consistency of doing it again and again and again. When you do that, you will realize and you start feeling the change coming through. So if you set up a routine and you've done it consistently for, let's say, a month, you're going to see changes in your balance, like your inner balance, as I call it. You're going to see a change, a shift, which you'll say, oh, you know what, I don't get so anxious anymore, I don't get hyped about things anymore. So that is what you need to get at. And it's a lifelong journey. You don't have to do all this tomorrow and arrive at a certain point. So you are doing this every single day and then not thinking about it. You're just doing it because you have this faith and trust that it's going to help you in the future. And it does.
All right. That was Dr. Chetana Kripalu from Trinity Medical Associates and from the Angel Wing program. Thank you very much for such a wonderful set of comments and ideas regarding anatomy, physiology, and the mind-body connection.